Welcome to The Explainer. Some of the world's most famous landmarks started out as, well, impossible dreams. And today, we're diving into one of the biggest, a structure that the entire engineering world at the time said just couldn't be built. So, the big question is, how on earth do they pull it off? Well, believe it or not, the story doesn't start with engineering or blueprints. It starts with a revolution. Yeah, to really get the why of the Eiffel Tower, you've got to rewind the clock. I'm talking a full 100 years before a single piece of that famous iron was even forged. So check this out. The year is 1889, and it's a huge deal for France. It's the 100th anniversary of their revolution, and they want to throw a massive party, a World's Fair, to show off just how powerful and advanced they are. But for a party like that, you need a centerpiece, right? Something spectacular. Something that would just scream progress to the whole world. Okay, but there was a teeny tiny problem. A huge one, actually. The best engineers of the day, they were all convinced you just couldn't build anything over 200 meters high. They thought it would literally collapse under its own weight or get blown over by the wind. And the proposal that won the competition? It was for a tower reaching a staggering 300 meters. That's a full 100 meters past what everyone thought was the absolute limit. And this is where our main character, the man himself, Gustave Eiffel, enters the picture. You gotta understand, he wasn't just pitching a new building. He was basically proposing to break the laws of physics as they were understood at the time. Now, if anyone could do it, it was this guy. See, Eiffel wasn't just some engineer. He was a rock star when it came to working with iron. He'd already built these enormous, mind-bending bridges. And get this, he even designed the internal skeleton that holds up the Statue of Liberty. His work was so next level that people gave him a pretty cool nickname. They called him Le Magicien du Fer, the magician of iron, and you can see why. His creations were so light and elegant, they almost looked like they were floating, just defying gravity. But his secret? It wasn't magic. Nope. It was something way more impressive. It was planning. Just insane, meticulous, almost obsessive planning. Before they even thought about forging a single piece of iron, his team spent 3 full years just crunching numbers and making over 5,000 drawings. Every single angle, every stress point, every last rivet, it was all calculated and drawn out down to the tiniest detail. All right, so the plans are finally done. And now, the real race begins. The clock is ticking, and they've got just over 2 years to actually build this impossible 300-meter-tall giant. And the construction? Wow. It was just a masterclass in how to run a project. First, they laid these super deep foundations. But then came the really tough part, the first level. It took an entire year, a whole year, just to get those 4 huge legs to curve just right and meet up perfectly. But once they cracked that puzzle, the rest of the tower just shot up, incredibly fast. I mean, just try to wrap your head around the scale of this thing. The tower wasn't built like a normal building. It was more like a giant, unbelievably complex Lego set. We're talking over 18,000 individual iron pieces, and each one was made somewhere else, in a factory, with insane precision, all designed to fit together perfectly on site. So what held this giant iron puzzle together? Rivets. 2.5 million of them, and every single one was assembled by hand. Imagine this, 4-man crews, high up in the air, heating each rivet till it was white hot and then hammering it into place. Absolutely wild. And this is why all that crazy, obsessive planning was so important. Every one of those 18,000 plus parts had to be perfect. The margin for error, less than 0.5 millimeter. I mean, think about it. A tiny mistake down at the bottom would become a huge, disastrous problem way up at the top. So if a piece wasn't absolutely perfect, it got sent right back to the factory. No exceptions. But here's the most incredible part of this whole story. Because of that precision and because Eiffel insisted on new safety gear like guardrails and screens, not a single worker died during the construction on the tower itself. Not one. For a project this huge, this dangerous, in the 1880s, that's basically a miracle. So, the tower is finished. It's an absolute triumph, a symbol of a brand new age. But the story isn't over, not by a long shot. In fact, believe it or not, the whole thing was almost torn down. This is going to sound crazy, but the Eiffel Tower was never supposed to be permanent. The original deal was that it would only stand for 20 years. Just 20. After the World's Fair was over, the plan was to tear it down for scrap.
And you know what? A lot of people in Paris would have been happy to see it go. The city's biggest artists and writers, they hated it. They protested, they signed petitions. They called it a monstrous and useless smokestack that was going to ruin the beautiful soul of their city.
So what saved it from the wrecking ball? Well, something nobody could have predicted: science. Just as that 20-year deadline was coming up, this brand new thing called radio was invented. And it turned out the tower's insane height made it the best radio antenna in the world. It was used for the very first transatlantic radio signals. All of a sudden, this useless tower was scientifically essential. And so over the years, the tower transformed. It went from being this controversial temporary thing to a beloved icon for the whole world. And along the way, it picked up some pretty amazing stories and a very famous nickname: La Dame de Fer, the Iron Lady. Okay, here are a few fun facts for you. You know those iconic sparkly lights? They weren't actually made a permanent thing until 1989 for the tower's 100th birthday. Also, it's constantly being repainted by hand every 7 years. Oh, and the best part? Gustave Eiffel built a secret little apartment for himself right at the very top. Can you imagine having that view? But, its history isn't all sparkle. There are moments of tragedy, too. Back in 1912, there was this inventor, Franz Reichelt. They called him the Flying Tailor. He was so sure his new parachute coat would work that he decided to test it by jumping off the first level of the tower. It didn't open, and he died on impact. It's a really grim reminder that with great innovation comes great risk. When you really think about it, the Eiffel Tower's story is just incredible. It's about transformation, right? It went from being this temporary, hated chunk of metal to an eternal symbol of Paris and of France itself. It really just shows you what meticulous planning and human ingenuity can do, how a powerful idea can make the impossible possible. And that kind of leaves us with one final question to chew on. What marvel are we building today? Maybe something we even complain about, that people 100 years from now will look at with that same sense of wonder.